On Halloween in 2016, me and my three pals, let's call them J, K, and L, decided to go looking for candy in the busy downtown area. This part of town was perfect for trick-or-treating since all the houses were packed close together. This meant we could get a ton of candy without having to walk too much. Usually, around 10 p.m., the streets would start to get quiet, and by 10:30 p.m. it felt like we were the only kids still out there asking for treats. Most of the houses were dark by that time. Maybe 1 out of every 10 would still open the door for us. So we stopped looking for candy and figured we'd just have some fun, especially since it was Saturday night. Just as we were about to just hang out, we spotted someone dressed as a clown walking towards us from far off, where the night was really foggy. This clown's outfit was over the top. The makeup was super detailed, with a wide, creepy smile and boils that looked like they were filled with blood. It was honestly pretty terrifying. We all kind of yelled and laughed when we saw the clown, but then we decided to leave and keep away from him. We went over to a park that wasn't too far away, ready to have some fun with cans of silly string and shaving cream. But we weren't the first to have this idea. The place was already covered in silly string, and someone had used shaving cream to write bad words on the walls of the park's bathroom. We chilled on the swings and slides, but then Jay noticed something off in the shadowy part of the park. There were 2 clowns coming towards us, and one was the same scary clown from before. The second clown looked even scarier than the first one, if that was even possible. And now, the first clown seemed to be holding something long and pointy, kind of like a spear. They started moving towards us really slowly, which was weird and creepy. At first, we tried to laugh it off, but it wasn't funny anymore when they got closer. Suddenly, they broke into a run, heading straight for us. We all sprinted in different directions, trying to get away from those clowns. One of the clowns was after me, so I dashed out of the park and down the street. I wasn't too familiar with the area, but I knew how to get to Ella's house. I kept running until I realized the clown wasn't chasing me anymore. I called up Ella, and he sounded out of breath but said he'd just lost one of the clowns and was on his way to his place. I told him I'd call Jay, and he said he'd contact Kay. Luckily, Jay answered right away, and he wasn't being chased, so he didn't sound as scared as Elle did. I told him to meet us at Elle's house. 10 minutes later, all 4 of us gathered in Elle's backyard, trying to make sense of what had just happened. We had a good laugh about it now that it was all over, while munching on the candies we had collected. Kay headed home, and the rest of us hung out in Elle's living room for a while. We turned off the lights, turned on the TV, and played some Xbox One party game. But then Jay looked out the window, and he suddenly crouched down and motioned for us to be quiet. He said there was a clown outside. We didn't believe him at first, so I looked out the window too. But it was too late. The clown outside Ella's house locked eyes with me through the window. I quickly closed the curtains and told Elle that Jay wasn't making it up. Elle's parents weren't home, so we couldn't go to his dad for help. Instead, we turned off the TV and headed upstairs to Elle's bedroom. From there, we peeked out the window, but the clown had vanished. Actually, we never saw either of those clowns again. The next morning, Elle texted all of us, saying he found a fake clown nose on his backyard patio table. It was clear that someone had deliberately put it there to scare us. And it had worked. Luckily, that creepy clown trend didn't last long. After a month or so, it just became a distant memory. It was Halloween night, and my parents took my 2 younger brothers out for trick-or-treating. I didn't have any plans, so they asked me to answer the door and give out candies while they were away. We live on a quiet street with hardly any trick-or-treaters, so each time the doorbell rang, it startled me. I sat in the living room watching TV with a bucket of candies next to me. My mom always got Butterfingers for Halloween for some reason. When the doorbell rang again, I grabbed the orange bucket and went to open the door. There stood someone in a scary mask and robe, holding out a pillowcase for candy. It seemed like they hadn't collected much candy that night, and since it was getting late and not many kids were coming by, I gave them a bunch of candies. The person walked away without saying thank you, which made me feel a bit bad, but I shrugged it off and returned to the couch. After the movie I was watching ended, I started flipping through TV channels. During a quiet moment as I changed channels, I heard a thud and a bump coming from downstairs near the back door. I turned down the TV volume to listen more closely, and I headed to the staircase. To my shock, the back door was wide open. My heart raced as fear gripped me. I had forgotten to lock it when I was in the backyard earlier. The big question was whether I had heard the door opening or closing, and if someone was now in the house. I called out for my mom and dad and my younger brothers, but there was eerie silence coming from the dark den below. I was too scared to go down there. Unfortunately, there was no door to separate the main floor from the stairs leading to the den, so sitting in the living room didn't feel safe anymore. I kept the TV on, but muted, as the extra light it provided made me feel a bit safer. It took a while, but I finally realized I should call my parents and ask them to come back home. My mom said they'd be home in about half an hour and assured me that there was nothing to worry about, just my imagination playing tricks on me. I hung up the phone, and then I heard the sound of a wooden step creaking under the carpeted stairs leading to the den. I froze on the couch, unable to move. Then came another creak. I tried to move as quietly as possible, getting up from the couch and tiptoeing toward the front door. As I passed the couch, which blocked my view of the den stairs from the living room, I saw something unsettling on the staircase. It was the Scream Mask, looking up at me from the stairs, but in a way that clearly showed they didn't want to be seen. The angle and the dim lighting made the sight even more chilling. When they noticed me, they quickly retreated into the darkness of the den. I rushed upstairs and locked myself in my room, then called my mom again to tell her what had just happened. They decided to cut their trip short and came home. Only when my parents got back did I feel safe enough to leave my room. My dad and I thoroughly searched the entire den, every closet and every room, but thankfully, there was no one there. The lesson I learned from this experience was simple. Always keep your doors locked, because it turns out that this person had just walked in through our unlocked back door. My big brother decided to throw a Halloween party, and he's in his second year of college. I'm just an 8th grader. Our parents were away for the whole weekend, so he figured it was a good time for a party. He made it very clear that he didn't want me around during the party, but luckily, I had already made plans to go trick-or-treating with 2 of my buddies. We all agreed that this might be our last year of trick-or-treating, so we wanted to make it awesome. We started in the afternoon right after school, which was when most kids were out and people were still giving out lots of candy. By the time it got dark, we each had 2 bags filled with candy. We made pit stops at our houses to drop off the loot, but we weren't done. We wanted another bag of candy. After having dinner and taking a break at my friend's house, we headed out again with empty bags and flashlights. I'll explain why in a bit. It was probably around 9 o'clock by now. Getting candy was slower because most houses had run out, and not everyone was answering their doors anymore. We kept going for about an hour because we were having a blast, even though we didn't get much candy this time. By the time it was around 10:30 or 11, we decided to stop. It felt a bit rude to keep knocking on people's doors so late. Everyone else had gone home because it was a Tuesday night, a work and school night. But we had already agreed to skip school the next day. We were all in the same homeroom, and we knew there wouldn't be much happening at school. So to us, the night was still young. We decided to go to a place the locals called the Ghoul House. It had a spooky history. A couple had divorced after their child died in that house, and then the wife moved out. A few weeks later, the husband sadly took his own life at the kitchen table. It had been fenced off ever since, and we couldn't understand why it hadn't been sold or torn down. When we got there, the house looked even scarier in the dark. It was taller than the other houses, and a black fence surrounded the front yard with overgrown bushes. We easily hopped the front gate, and the thrill of doing something forbidden made it even more exciting. We snuck around the back to avoid being seen by any nosy neighbors. The back windows were boarded up from the inside, and the back door had a table blocking it. Someone had clearly tried really hard to keep people out, probably a neighbor. With some teamwork, we managed to quietly move the table away from the door and push it open. The door didn't even have a doorknob, so it was pretty easy to get inside. Being inside felt strange, uncomfortable, and thrilling all at once. We all had our flashlights, which provided some light in the otherwise pitch-black building. We found ourselves in the back living area, some sort of den. The creaky wooden floors and untouched appearance made it seem like nobody had been here in years. It didn't look like anyone had ever broken in before, which added to the eerie feeling. This room didn't have anything interesting, so we moved on to the kitchen. In the corner, there was an old fridge that one of my friends decided to open. The moment he did, a terrible smell filled the room, a mix of rot and plastic. The fridge had some old empty milk and orange juice cartons, and that was about it. The whole kitchen smelled so bad that we quickly left. Next, we entered the living room, and it gave us all the creeps. There was something about it that made you feel like someone would appear in one of the corners whenever you turned around. One of my friends pointed his flashlight up, revealing a giant hole in the ceiling that led to an upstairs room. As we all shined our lights up there, we heard a couple of thumps from above, right above us. We immediately turned off our lights, and I had a painful feeling in my chest from what we had just heard. We whispered to each other that those were definitely footsteps. One of my friends suggested going upstairs to see what it was, but my other friend and I said absolutely not. We tiptoed toward the back door instead. However, the persistent friend decided to go upstairs by himself, and he didn't make much effort to be quiet about it. We felt like we had to wait for him downstairs in the living room. We heard his footsteps upstairs, moving across the house until he stopped directly above us. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness by now, so I could see his figure through the hole in the ceiling. I tried whispering loudly enough for him to hear, but apparently he couldn't. I didn't want to get any louder when suddenly we heard footsteps coming from the staircase in the living room. Both of us turned on our flashlights and pointed them at the top of the stairs, revealing our other friend walking down. The realization hit us immediately, and neither of us dared to shine our lights up to the hole in the ceiling to see who was standing there. I just screamed, "Run!" and we all sprinted to the back door, out of the house, and to one of my friend's homes. The friend who had gone upstairs told us that he smelled something rotten up there, like a decaying animal. And he also heard breathing from one of the rooms. To this day, we have no idea who was in that house, but it didn't seem like it was just another curious person, given how tightly boarded up the house was. Needless to say, we never went back there again.